Welcome to episode 252 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the Drillers, Dakar, and Football edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host. I'm still sporting the championship belt because I said I will, so I'm a man of my word. Bowling really well, so happy about that, even with the bum hand and wrist, but we're getting through it. Uh, as always, I'm with the iRacing Indy 500 champion, a computer genius, a gentleman and a scholar, and somebody who I'm going to be definitely going to for help because I have signed myself up for a sim racing league, and I'm trying not to be the absolute worst. Next to last or second to last, okay, fine, but not last. His name is Josh Fine. What's going on, brother?
Doing great, and of course, yeah. Ask me any question about sim racing, and I'll try to help you out or whatever. So yeah, I'm glad to hear you're getting into that league, and it's definitely a fun hobby to be getting into. So yeah, but excited to talk about everything on our show, and now we're 1 week into the NFL playoffs, and a lot happened there, and ready to talk about that, and all the latest news and updates as we inch closer to the start of 2024 or 2025. I have not moved on from 2024 yet, but everything in the season now.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about the playoffs for the wild card weekend, which was pretty god awful outside of one game. Um, there were signs of good play or hope for certain teams, but mostly demolition. We'll get in all those. We'll also talk about coaching updates for Josh's Jaguars in their search for a new head coach. The Niners in the search for a new special teams and defensive coordinator. You also have the Dallas Cowgirls and Mike McCarthy deciding to part ways. The possibility of Mike Tomlin maybe after 18 years as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, only the third coach in their illustrious history, possibly coming to an end. So there's other things going on with that. So we'll get in all the football stuff. There's been NASCAR news regarding the Daytona 500 for who's going to be in the race or who's going to have a chance to be in the race versus who isn't. Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Junior Motorsports, it sounds like, are going to be attempting their first ever cup race. So that'll be something. Who their driver will be is a great question now. I mean, who you're going to hire a month out of the Daytona 500, but might be forgetting someone that I should be thinking of or something. But we'll get into all the NASCAR news across all three major series. In IndyCar, we know who the main announced booth will be for Fox's IndyCar coverage. They put out their first commercial, which was basically showing all the different personalities of Joseph Newgarden, which was great. I give credit to Alex Pillow for his line about Joseph Newgarden's kids book, but we'll talk about Indy, and then there was also an announcement, one driver announcement. Dale Coyne actually has announced one of his drivers for this year. We'll talk about the news in Formula One, and then go into the roundup with the Dakar Rally, with some Americans faring pretty well. Formula E, Mexico City E-Prix last week. Supercross A1 took place. They'll be racing at San Diego this week. And Josh, which is a pretty good lead in to what Josh is going to be doing this weekend, the Roar Before the 24 for IMSA. We'll make our picks and preview the games for a divisional round weekend. Josh will let us know all things going on in iRacing, gaming, and the sim segment, including what race he'll be in, and then we'll call it a day. So yeah, let's get into the NFL first and foremost. With the wild card weekend, you had 6 games across 3 days. You had Deontay didn't work, and we're on to the Chiefs. Oh, so they released Deontay Johnson, and then supposedly Tyreek Hill signed with the Baltimore Ravens. But yeah, so there was in terms of last weekend, we had the first game was the Houston LA Chargers game. LA went out to a quick lead, but then Houston had a couple of freak plays that worked out, and that kind of basically turned the momentum. And then CJ Stroud probably looked about as good as he's looked all year in this spot, and he was able to throw darts to Nico Collins. The run game was working. Their defense with Will Anderson and company, D'Amico Ryan's crew was absolutely destroying Justin Herbert, and he turned the ball over a bunch. And Jim Harbaugh's return to the playoffs ended in the first round, 32-12. Houston wins, and in turn that led them more than likely they were going to go to play the Kansas City Chiefs, but we needed to see what happened in the Baltimore-Pittsburgh game. There was really no mystery in that game either. Baltimore was way better, 28-14. The 31-7 for Buffalo. They needed some time to get on the gas, and then Denver had some unfortunate plays, and they basically handed it over. And then Buffalo was Josh Allen trying to prove why he should be the MVP. And we'll get a preview of who should be the MVP of the league coming Sunday, because Baltimore and Buffalo will be playing each other. Kermit the Frog will host CJ Stroud again this coming weekend to start divisional round weekend. On the NFC side, the first game was the Philadelphia Green Bay game, and Philly dominated that one. The best game of the weekend was the Tampa Bay Washington game on Sunday Night Football. Baker Mayfield lays the ball down, and amongst other mistakes and miscues for Tampa Bay and a lack of depth on the defense that was already kind of getting shredded by Jaden Daniels and Washington for the first time in 20 years since Coach Gibbs was there. That's how long it's been. Coach Gibbs did his second stint with the Redskins, now the Commanders, and that was the last time they won a playoff game, and it was in Tampa Bay. So that's pretty crazy. Daniels, Dan Quinn, they go down there, get the job done. And they will go to Detroit, play on Saturday night in Ford Field there for a chance to advance to the NFC Championship game. And then NBC game on Sunday afternoon will be Philly hosting the LA Rams, since the LA Rams baptized the Vikings on Monday Night Football in Arizona due to the wildfires. And our prayers and our thoughts go out to everyone out there for what's going on, for the just absolute devastation and horrible situation that's going on in California with all the wildfires, considering the lack of leadership and empathy coming in. So in terms of the wild card weekend, Josh, I mean, I kind of just ran through, glossed over all the games. I know we both deviated on the Washington game, so you got me there. And I think that was the only game where we deviated. Every other game we picked the same team, I believe. I felt like LA was, even though it ended up being they had to play a pseudo road game, um, the logistics, the league, everybody working together, and they basically had a home game in Arizona, and Sam Darnold for a second week in a row, and that offensive line was absolutely an unmitigated disaster. Um, and Minnesota's defense, which has been really good for most of the year, and Brian Flores looking like a likely head coaching candidate getting a second chance in the league. His defense got shredded for a second consecutive week. But I mean, I think the takeaways from this weekend, other than the obvious MVP battle between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson on Sunday night or Sunday evening, is Jaden Daniels and the fact that, yeah, he's going to be the offensive rookie of the year. Yeah, he's a Heisman Trophy winner. But for the first time in decades, Washington has a quarterback, and Josh Harris has built or started building a foundation towards a winner. And they have a coach, they have a quarterback, and they have a GM in Adam Peters, who I honestly wish the Niners had promoted him because he's a great talent evaluator. And letting him out the door was unfortunate, and it was a mistake. They weren't going to be able to keep him because they weren't going to be able to offer him as much control, I guess. But I think the Commanders were the story of the weekend, personally, to me, Josh. I think secondarily, of course, the way the Rams have responded here, considering all that's going on around their homes, and the Rams trying to make a run here. McVay a couple of years ago, they went all in. Now they're building it with a draft. McVay basically trying to get him, and Stafford trying to put together one last run in a sense for him. Those are the two real takeaways I had from the weekend. But what did you see and get from this weekend, for other than what a lot of poor performances, I would say?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I mean, there's a lot of takeaways. The Washington Tampa Bay game. I mean, yeah, that was definitely the most exciting game to watch there. It was pretty defensive, I felt like, but it looked like for a little bit in the second half, the Buccaneers were gonna start to pull away with it. They'd stop Washington 2 times in the red zone on 4th and goal, but then Baker Mayfield fumbled and kind of let them back into the game there, and then that's when the Commanders, they will score another touchdown, and then the Buccaneers just didn't have control of the game from there and out, and yeah, the Commanders go out and win their first playoff game since like 2005, going back to the second Joe Gibbs era. So yeah, a lot of excitement there for the Commanders, and now they go to Detroit on Saturday, and we'll see how they play in the divisional round and see if they can put up some numbers on the Lions. The Lions, of course, are hurt on defense right now, and with the Jaden Daniels, they're pretty good quarterback on his legs and on throwing the ball. I think it's going to be definitely an interesting challenge for depleted Lions defense there. So we'll see what happens, but that should be an interesting game there. But yeah, I think the real surprise, I mean, I wasn't too surprised by the result, but a lot of people are like, what about the Rams and what they will do? And I felt like they'd be a good pick. Like I said last week, that they'd be a sneaky pick that could, make a run. And the beginning of the year, I guess they just didn't have good defense, injuries and stuff. But now everybody's all together. Stafford's done a really good job, keeping him in games, and everything. So now they have a chance to make a run. And I mean, on the other end, the Vikings, like, yeah, Sam Darnold, like once you get pressure on him, it seems like he's toast. So that's the takeaway I had from that. And it's like, because they played against Jacksonville, and Jacksonville had one of the worst defenses in the league, and he looked terrible, and they couldn't score a touchdown against Jacksonville, which is pretty hard to do in 2024 this year. So that team, it seemed like he was carried a lot by the offense, I think, but just didn't have good protection. Cam Robinson allowed 12 pressures, I think. So it's definitely not ideal for Sam Darnold. So when you factor in all of that, I mean, it was pretty easy to figure out that the Vikings, they weren't going to go anywhere. They're the first 14 team team to have won that many games and lose out in the wild card round. So I mean, it tells you how competitive the NFC was this year, but also just how bad it can be for them in this round. So yeah, that was definitely not a good result, and it also could hurt Sam Darnold next year if the Vikings don't bring him back. That definitely could hurt his stock because teams will look at the last two games for him and see how did he perform in those versus the rest, and weigh those a lot more, because those were both significant games, because he played against the Lions, and effectively that's a playoff game, going for the divisional title and the number one seed. And then the playoff game, of course, now you got to go win the wild card round, and they failed to do that against a lower ranked team in terms of records. So there's a lot at stake there for Darnold, and maybe that could have hurt him for whoever decides to pick him up next year. I'm assuming for at least a short-term deal, or even a longer-term deal. So that's the takeaway there. I think the other one that I think we got wrong was we both picked the Chargers to win, and a lot of people thought that was going to be an easy game for the Chargers. How bad the offense was for the Houston Texans throughout the most of the year. But the other fact of it was, well, the Houston Texans have a really good defense, and I know that because I had them in my other league in fantasy for most of the year, and they played pretty outstanding. They created a lot of turnovers, a lot of sacks, and that's exactly what happened on Saturday for the Chargers. The Chargers, I mean, for how good of a season that they had, I mean, I think really their offense, just didn't have enough firepower beyond Lad McConkey. Yeah, they had J.K. Dobbins there as well, but in terms of passing, that was really their only real weapon that could produce anything, because you saw the stats. I think Justin Herbert only had a couple of passes that went to other wide receivers that were completed, other than, I think he had like 2 or 3 passes completed to other wide receivers that weren't Lad McConkey. So it tells you the firepower that they need for that offense to really work. And they really needed to be able to get away and get to a big lead, and they only got field goals because they started out pretty good on defense. They created turnovers, had short fields, but they only got a couple field goals out of that. So for Chargers, I mean, they just didn't capitalize on that enough, and the way that their team is built, they had to have a lead to kind of control that game, and they just they had control kind of, but the game slipped away from them as the Texans hung around. So the other things, people talk about Justin Herbert. I mean, I'll defend Justin Herbert because people talk trash about Trevor Lawrence, and I feel like they have kind of similar archetypes and stuff, and I think Justin Herbert's a great quarterback. I don't think he's some average guy that just throws a pretty ball. It's I think you have to look at your quarterback is only go as far as how well you're coached and the level of talent around you. And And I mean, yeah, there are other teams like the Chiefs, that they just have a great offense, but they're well coached and they have enough talent on defense to kind of carry them around. So we'll see how that goes this weekend in the playoffs, but in the divisional round. But the Chargers, they just didn't have enough firepower to put away the Texans there. So that was the takeaway there. I mean, they had the pick six and points off turnovers there, so that definitely helped them there. So we'll see how they do that against the Chiefs though this weekend. And then the other game's not surprising with the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers just need to start over. I think. I mean, I don't think they should fire Mike Tomlin, but they definitely need to rebuild the offense. Russell Wilson, I don't think should start anymore for that team. Maybe go for Justin Fields, try to see what he can get out of him for a year, and see what he can do. But that team just I guess they're going to be a perennial 9-8 type of team that can make the playoffs and stuff, but they won't be able to go beyond that. But I don't think that means that they should get rid of Mike Tomlin. I think it's just they've got to change the personnel and how that team is built. But that was not a surprise that the Ravens were able to win by 2 scores on Saturday, and then on Sunday with both the Packers and the Eagles, and then the Bills and Broncos game. Not a surprise there that the Broncos and the Packers both lost their games. So it was a pretty interesting weekend, but I was a little bit surprised that we didn't see any away team upsets there. The Chargers, I mean, they were favored in their game. The Broncos started out hot, but then quickly cooled off, and then the Packers just never got things going throughout the first half. So, and in terms of upsets, that would have been cool to see one of those two teams win. With Broncos, with rookie quarterback and Bo Nix going over defeating the vaunted Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen. So that would have been interesting, but no real upsets. So now we have pretty stacked. I think in terms of the divisional rounds, pretty stacked. We'll talk about it later, but all those games, especially the Bills and the Ravens, that definitely is going to be a very good game. So it's now top heavy, and I guess, but now we get into the thick of things here in the divisional round.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't be trusting a guy who doesn't know where he's bowling for my football information, but so mistake there on the Tyreek Hill thing. But I mean, in terms of what you were saying, I mean, especially with Justin Herbert, I mean, you basically had him, Lad McConkey, who was probably one of the top 5 rookies in the offensive side for sure. And he had a great play. They had one big play together. And then J.K. Dobbins, when he was healthy, he helped me out in fantasy, of course. But other than that, they were not very good. And it's Greg Roman. It's a Greg Roman offense. So they're very vanilla, plain Jane, run the ball and its ball control. Hopefully this offseason they'll get some more weapons for Justin Herbert, like a tight end, since they're staring at Brock Bowers for the next 10 years, or as long as he stays in Las Vegas until somebody else pays him a shit ton of money to leave. And then you have, Taylor Swift's boyfriend, and what's the other team in that division? Yeah, so that's in Denver. Yeah, so Denver, I don't really know who they have there, but they're a team that would go and incorporate tight ends, fullbacks, that whole thing. So the Chargers are not as far off as the game score might seem. It's just that game script wise and the way they run an offense, it wasn't going to work in their favor if they fell behind by a lot. Green Bay was in a similar spot. basically whenever they played the top opponents, they struggled. And the Eagles' offense is one of the best offenses across the board. So once they were down, you know, two possessions, it was going to be tough for Green Bay. Even though they've been a solid team this year, it's kind of been wide receiver by committee. If they were able to stop Josh Jacobs, which the Eagles were, it was going to be hard for them to execute. So, and then the defense didn't really have the answer. Xavier McKinney, giant player that went to Green Bay and had played well. I mean, there's too many weapons on that Eagles. Wide receivers, tight ends, of course, Saquon being Saquon. So, I mean, the grand scheme of thing is they've expanded the playoffs to have an additional team, and this has been going on for the last few years. But I think I always used to look forward to Wild Card Weekend. I always thought Wild Card Weekend used to have a lot more drama to it. It's almost like it's watered down a little bit, and on top of it, they drag it 3 days. Which I also think is stupid, but it is what it is. We have, I think, of the final 8 teams, I mean, there really isn't one outside of maybe you could make a case for Houston. There might be there could be fades on Washington or LA, but LA's been playing great. Recently, they've been one of the better teams in the second half of the season. The Commanders figure out ways to win. They're like the cardiac kids. So we'll see what the teams that are going against the number 1 seeds do. Can they compete? Kermit the Frog's not thrown a pass since Christmas in a live game. So what will they be like? Chris Jones has had some extended time off, so can he get out and be in great condition or great shape to get going right while they're after a long layoff? Something to see with that. In terms of the coaching situation, I know the 49ers have been talking to people for defensive coordinators and for special teams coordinator, but nothing of no major news. Patriots, of course, hired Mike Vrabel. Tommy Rees is promoted to the offensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns. McCarthy ended up being they parted ways. Couple of the defensive coordinator and defensive line coach for Atlanta were fired on Saturday. Wes Welker was fired by Miami, so hopefully he comes back to San Francisco. So there'll be, and maybe, and Rand Carthon, that's another person they can get back because he got let go by Tennessee. So no news on that I can say for the 49ers side, but for you, Josh, I know that Ben Johnson's been down there, I believe, and there's been other discussions. Bob Saleh. I'm surprised I haven't talked to a former Jaguar on this cycle here in Byron Leftwich. One, it hits the Rooney Rule, but then 2, he is a former Jaguar. He played a good amount of his career with the Jags too. He was drafted by him, but and he was the second. I think he was right. He was the next pick. If it wasn't Doug Peterson, was going to be Byron Leftwich. Wonder if what would be the case if they had went with him instead. But what are you hearing in regards to Jacksonville and what their plans are at the moment after some of their interviews?
Yeah, they've interviewed Ben Johnson, like you said. They've interviewed Aaron Glenn already, so that takes care of that. They've interviewed Robert Sala. I think they have Liam Cohen scheduled for this week later. I think they've interviewed. Yeah, they got Sala. I think they talked to Brian Flores, or they have him scheduled to interview here. So, I mean, those are all good names, like I've talked about before. I think any of those guys are good. I think they interviewed somebody from the Raiders. Forgot who it was, Brian Murphy or I don't somebody that I should pull it up, but the yeah, you mentioned Byron Leftwich, and I think Byron Leftwich interviewed with the Patriots last week, but I mean they of course went ahead and hired Vrabel there, but I mean I don't think Byron Leftwich. I don't think he would interview because I know last time like he was all but gonna be the head coach for the Jaguars, and then I think talks stalled because from what I remember, I think he didn't want Trent Baalke. He wanted to have his own guy, and then ultimately, I think he reneged on that and decided to withdraw from the coaching search. So, yeah, I don't think he would be in that, but I mean, maybe that'll happen. But yeah, that's what I remember hearing about because that was all but gonna happen. So yeah, they've scheduled Brian Flores to be scheduled there. Coaching search. Yeah, let's see. They talked with Saleh. They interviewed with him. Let me just go to the other website that I use. But yeah, Aaron Glenn. They talked with him. I think they talked with, or they're going to talk with Kellen Moore as well, which I'm not for Kellen Moore. I don't think he's that good. I think he's overrated. Yeah, as a candidate for head coach. Yeah, I think they want to talk with Joe Brady. They requested with Todd Monken. They interviewed Steve Spagnuolo. Let's see what else. Yeah, I think those are all the guys. Yeah, Patrick Graham. I'm sorry, Patrick Graham. That's the former defensive coordinator for the Raiders. So, and Spagnuolo last week. So, or on Friday. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I mean, literally anybody. It's just more of what the personnel structure is going to be in the front office and what they're going to do. And allegedly, there's reports that have said that the Jaguars are willing to move on from Trent Baalke if it's an issue, which why didn't you just go and fire him anyways? Like, why? I don't understand. So that's an issue there. And apparently, I mean, it's not a surprise, but I heard something earlier. They said in the final weeks of the season, Trent Baalke started basically stabbing people in the back, figuratively speaking, in the final days to, make himself, immune to the firings, basically. So, yeah, not a surprise there. I mean, you're very familiar with that as well. So, yeah, and everything. And, I guess that's who Shad is listening to. And then allegedly, if it is a problem, they could move on from him. Like I said, well, why not you just move on from him before, or just go ahead and, tomorrow just announce that, okay, he's gone, and we'll interview or have you help pick out the general manager for whoever the head coach is going to be. I don't understand that, but we'll see. So yeah, I mean, all those games. I mean, I guess I'm figuring it's probably going to be the Liam Cohen. It's probably going to end up being the guy. We'll see. I mean, people are kind of harping on that he doesn't have enough NFL experience, but I don't think that's necessary. I mean, you just got to be. What I want is somebody who can lead people and coach that's going to be able to impose, has a mentality that he can impose on the team, and that can matriculate into, dominating opponents. So that's what I want. But yeah, I mean, I hope hopefully that we can wrap up that search soon, and we find out who the next head coach of the Jaguars is going to be. So we'll see how it goes, but yeah, just kind of patiently awaiting that announcement, and having to go through social media and see what rumors are floating around and all that stuff.
Yeah, I was reading over on uh, a 49er page, a news page, where they're talking about Graziano for ESPN, formerly of the Star Ledger here in New Jersey, saying that Joe Brady, the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator, is who he thinks is going to become the coach for the Jags. So either way, big time offensive coordinator for a prolific offense. Um, I think that's the line for Jacksonville um, when it comes to like now with the Cowgirls. Who knows what they're going to do? The Jets have interviewed everybody and their mother for their two positions, but terrible ownership's probably playing a part in why they haven't figured out anything there. Um, in Cleveland, they just promoted an offensive. They got an offensive coordinator. They promoted a guy from within, but then the 49ers are trying to promote um, Kubiak, and they couldn't do that. Um, they interviewed a guy from Iowa State, so I guess it's somebody that uh, maybe Brock Purdy was familiar with. I don't know. Second season, okay, so yeah, wide receivers coach might have been familiar with it. Temporary, yeah. So you were trying to make Clay Kubiak the offensive coordinator, and they're saying that violated NFL rules, which is ridiculous to me considering how they don't bother to follow protocols for whatever. Um, Chris Tabor, former Panthers uh, interim coach, uh, special teams coordinator for many years, and they've also interviewed uh, Jet Modkins from Detroit, an assistant special teams coordinator, and then Chris Banjo, the assistant special teams coordinator for Denver. And then Nick Sorensen, who had been the defensive coordinator, is also going to interview. It looks like what their angle is on the defensive coordinator side is they're kind of waiting on Bob Sala to see if whether he's going to take a head coaching job or if he's available. And honestly, at this point, after the nonsense of the last 2 years, even though 2 years ago their defense was a top 5 defense, there was issues and regressions that led into what we saw this year. Need to figure out what they're going to do. So we'll keep everyone posted on what happens with all these coaching changes and, of course, get playoffs more as we go along. Yeah, we'll go into NASCAR for some updates. In terms of the Cup Series, they're talking about Kurt Busch has actually been cleared to return to racing. So that's something after I think he got arrested a month or so ago. So that's Kurt Busch for you. But and he was hanging out with Ronnie, the limo driver, and some other rich person on a holiday in Cabo. So that was fun. But Kurt Busch coming back. We're going to talk about the Mike Wallace thing with Carl Long, because why wouldn't they screw Carl Long over? Busch Light is going to have a date, like a speed dating thing going on at Daytona, so I can only imagine how good that'll end up being. Yeah, so they had the new open exemption provisional to add a 41st spot is going to go to Helio Castro Neves. So that'll be something. So Amazon Prime sponsoring Clyde. Was a Haas factory team that was last Wednesday. Jason Trinchier, who has experience, he'll be working with Sam Mir. Jonathan Tony stays with the 00, and Sheldon Creed. Nick Sandler, who comes from Roush, is basically the HFT car is going to be a fourth Roush car. So they'll be connected with the 6, 17, and 60. So that'll be something there. Going through some of these other ones. Hendricks signed Corey Day to a multi-year deal. Noah Gregson took I guess that 4 or whatever that stylized 4, which is the one that Kevin Harvick's been using for I don't know how many years. I'm gonna work under the assumption that he's under Kevin Harvick's management group to go and use that 4. That's the only thing I can come up with because it's exactly the same. And it looks like Chase Briscoe's car from New Hampshire last year, except it's just a 4 instead of a 14. Yeah, so then that'll be for Gagson, Alfredo attempting the 500 with Beard Motorsports. Yeah, so there's the main. I think the main story for the Cup Series is Helio Castro Neves, who was announced for Project 91 to attempt the Daytona 500, is going to be locked in with the open exemption provisional. At the same time, Mike Wallace, a former winner at Daytona, he's the original winner of the Truck Series race at Daytona when they ran unrestricted 25 years ago, driving for Jim Smith and the ASC Team ASC Ford with Timmy Cahuth as his crew chief and all. He won in a truck. He's won Xfinity there, and he's won an ARCA 200 there. He's won, and this is before ARCA became a complete shit show. So he's won in 3 categories at Daytona. He's finished in the top 5 in the Daytona 500 before. He hasn't run a cup race in 10 years. So that's one. Age being 65, also probably a flag. However, you're approving a guy who has never driven a NASCAR vehicle of any kind ever in a competitive situation. Probably in a test or something, maybe. Helio Castro Neves. He drove SRX, which I guess you can make a case as pseudo because it's like a late model, a straight rail late model of some sort, because Evernham built them. But you're going to go and approve, you're going to make up this provisional so you can get extra eyes on the race and let Helio get in the race. And then you're going to send Mike Wallace and MBM, basically put MBM in a position where they're not going to have anybody for the ride, or they're just going to be stuck. It's selective. It's typical selective enforcement by NASCAR. Approve Mike Wallace, say everything is good, and then like 2 weeks later go and say, oh no, we're not going to approve Mike Wallace, who has like 500-600 starts or whatever the hell it is, some 400 or 500 starts in NASCAR top three series. I don't like Mike Wallace at all, but I know that Mike Wallace can drive on a super speedway, and Carl Long shows up and does the best he can with what he's got. And NASCAR's had a hard on for him for like 20 years, 20 plus years. And it's like at some point you have to give it up. Like you tried to run him out of business. You made it so he was only working on pit crews, all this stuff. He's trying to make the 500. It's going to be virtually impossible for him to make the race. Even with a Roush Yates engine, even with a good, proper Ford Mustang Dark Horse, it was already going to be a very long shot that they were going to make the race. But then you add this into it. To me, it's just really bad, I don't know what you think, Josh, in regards to the way they've handled those two specific situations. And that doesn't even take into account you have a 7-time Cup Series champion in Jimmy Johnson who's in an open car. And then you also have Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Kelly Earnhardt Miller making an attempt, first time, it sounds like, to run the Daytona 500. And we all know it's probably a fifth Hendrick car, but they'll come up with some way to say that it isn't. But I mean, we're not giving the past champions Revisional a 7-time Cup champion because he doesn't have the cachet, but we'll give a promoter's option to the 4-time Indianapolis 500 champion who's never driven in any of NASCAR's 3 major categories and is going to have one ARCA start to his name before he runs the Daytona 500. I mean, I get it. Granted, you can say, well, Kyle Larson had never driven an IndyCar in a race before, and then he went and ran the Indy 500. But the point is, you have a week of practice. He had to practice. He had to run a rookie test. He had to do a bunch of stuff. But also, he's Kyle Larson. I'm not sure what NASCAR are trying to do here, but it's typical. I guess it's typical NASCAR, their selective enforcement, but I don't know what you think about that, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation when you kind of look at it, because I think on one hand that provisional, I mean, yes, he's locked in, but that doesn't mean that Elio's just gonna hang around in the back for the entire duel and not do anything, right? Because that only happens. This rule only happens if he fails to qualify. So that entails that, okay, they're going to be dog crap on qualifying day or night, and okay, now they have to qualify into the field through the duel, and then they get in a crash or they lose the draft, and then Elio's not able to make up a lap and fails to qualify that way. Or even so, what happened to JJ Yeley last year, they were in the race and then they just picked the wrong lane and Jimmy Johnson just barely got around them back in time for the start finish line. So there's that. But then of course they could easily just qualify their way in on Sunday, or on like Wednesday night, whenever it is, and be done with it, and then that rule doesn't come into effect. But at the same time, why do we have to do this? It should be a display of how hard it is, because you talk about the Indianapolis 500 and Kyle Larson being in that, right? Because, I mean, yeah, I guess there's always a chance that he could have failed to qualify for that race, but realistically, and I think here, even realistically, I think Trackhouse is going to bring a legitimate effort to where they don't have to rely on making it into the duels, or, having to race their way into the 500, right? I think, with Chevy behind them and, all the publicity and stuff, I don't think that that'd be an issue. But look at the Indianapolis 500. I mean, you talked about, like you said, with Kyle Larson. Well, let's turn the page back a few years and go back to Fernando Alonso. Remember the first year he qualified fifth, but that was with the effort joint with McLaren and Andretti. So they qualified fifth, but then they come back 2 years later with Carlin, and much more from scratch effort, and through comedy of errors, failed to make the race ultimately, and showed how hard it is to make the Indianapolis 500. So, that showed how difficult it is, and maybe on the other end, NASCAR crown jewel event, Daytona 500, it should be difficult to make the 500. So, Elio kind of being already guaranteed kind of draws away from that, kind of waters that down a little bit. So, yeah, there's definitely some issue there. Realistically speaking, this is really the only race where this rule is going to ever come into effect, probably. Maybe one other race, because you don't really see this many cars attempt a race for NASCAR. This is the only one where there's going to be enough people to have a chance for people to fail to qualify for a race. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, it would be controversial because I haven't seen Jimmy Johnson officially announce that he's running in the Daytona 500, but I mean, we'll all expect him to, because he has done the past 2 years with Legacy Motor Club there. So we expect him to announce that. So it would be crazy if Elio ended up making it into the race, or having to fall back on this rule, but then Jimmy Johnson gets knocked out of qualifying for the Daytona 500. It should be a wild situation there, which, minus this rule, would actually be kind of wild to see happen. But now that this rule's in effect, it's like, okay, well, there's like some mismatch here when you have one of your greatest drivers in the series fail to qualify over a guy that, while great in other racing, hasn't made any mark in NASCAR. So there's that, of course. And then you talked about the whole deal with Mike Wallace and Carl Long. I mean, yeah, Mike Wallace is experienced, but he hasn't raced in a long time, so there's the weigh-in over there. So I kind of get that, but then also it's just like MBM Motorsports. I mean, yeah, they've just had it out for them since the alleged oversized engine in 2008. So yeah, I don't know where that's going to go, and we'll see. We'll see if they are able to find another driver. Maybe that's Dale Jr.'s partnership there to help them get a ride. Maybe, I mean, if the rumors are true, I mean, what we saw on Reddit earlier, we were talking about with Dan Ricciardo being in the Daytona 500, that'd be really wild. But that would be even more wild, because then that invoke who's bigger name in terms of, this open exemption provisional, the 4-time Indy 500 winner, or 6-7-time winner in Formula One, which one means more? And they're both racing in NASCAR, so potentially, so that could be wild there. So yeah, I mean, it's only for this race too, so we'll see what happens. But I mean, that was obviously, I think, a lot of the talk last week. But I think another thing we probably should bring up is the change to the DVP policy, and how you're not eliminated. Like, I think the clock only begins like when you're in the garage, so you still have the ability to come back out in the race. Like, you're not immediately knocked out. So could bring back some of the old memories of seeing cars that were multiple laps down, trying to pick up a position or two. I mean, it could be, you've seen the playoffs, like cars get eliminated early race accident, right, where the car could have been salvageable to still hang around and maybe collect some points. So there's that option there. So yeah, a lot of people had, especially in this next gen era, where even a flat tire could eliminate you from the race these days. So if you couldn't get going again, so and you had to get towed back to the garage. So I think this definitely kind of makes it a little bit more fair in that aspect. And definitely there was always a lot of questionable enforcement, like we always talk about with the DVP, and what resetting the clock and having to be eliminated. I remember Bubba Wallace got eliminated because they somehow didn't meet minimum speed in the 2022 Coke 600 because they just happened to be classified as involved in a wreck, and I think some miscommunication on their end led to them and kind of on a technicality on the rule. So, and I remember 2017, Matt Kenseth got eliminated on a technicality with the DVP at Kansas, and that led to him being eliminated from the playoffs that year. So, I guess with the kind of retooling of it, maybe we don't see those results anymore.
Yeah, that's the getting that DVP changed is definitely something that was probably long time coming. They needed to make that adjustment so that people could go and put tires on the car. I mean, granted, you'll lose enough laps where you're not going to be in the mix, but you're still, at least you're not going to be eliminated from the race. So that's good. Playoff waiver. Now, to get a waiver, then you'd lose all your you would, if you got a waiver, you wouldn't get any playoff points whatsoever. So you'd start at 2,000. So it would be essentially like not on winning a race at all or whatever, or winning stages or any of that. They include medical reasons or age restriction. Okay. They also changed performance obligation, talked about OEM penalties, suspension deferrals. So that'll be some of those changes. Run through some of the other stuff. Anthony Alfredo will be driving for Young's Motorsports since Leland Honeymoon has moved over to Cope Family Racing for this year with Thomas Annunziata, the New Jersey road racer, who's been in TA2 for the last few years. Audible will sponsor Sam Mayer, probably another company his dad's involved in. Shane Van Gisbergen, Ross Chastain will be part of the number 9 star car for JRM. I mentioned the Corey Day multi-year deal as a driver development. Curious how that'll affect Rajah Caruth. Mentioned Dean Thompson last week and Justin Bonsignor. Trucks, Henderson Motorsports is going to have Parker Kligerman come back for a few races. It sounds like a 10-race deal. Parker Kligerman, along with Jamie McMurray, will be the two analysts for the CW for the Xfinity Series. They'll have Adam Alexander as the lead announcer, and then their pit road announcers will be Dylan Welsh and Kim Kuhn. Reun Brothers Racing will have 3 trucks, the 33 with Frankie Muniz, and then they'll run the numbers 2 and 22. The 2, of course, coming from Rev Racing, which is now defunct, and then the 22, which they've been running the last few years. So that goes over all the NASCAR news. And IndyCar, the major news is the announcement of the broadcast crew for Fox. Will Buxton is going to be the lead announcer, coming from Formula One, and his analysts will be 2 familiar names, and Townsend Bell and James Hinchcliffe. So no changes there. In terms of who will be on pit road, we don't know yet. But I mean, at least for our sake, also announced Pam Miller, will be the Fox IndyCar producer. Well, that's good. Will be announced at a later date. Pit reporters, and yeah, so that yeah, Pam Miller's been at this for many years, so that's a good hire there too. So at least it looks like they have a clue in terms of who they're going to have as their announce team. Now, I never knew that Will Buxton ever wanted to be a lead announcer, so he'll have the pressure to follow the likes of course, old friend of his, Lee Diffie, Kevin Lee, who did a great job in the latter part of the season. There, amongst others, at least it's not Jamie Little. That's all I can say. I'm just grateful it's not Jamie Little because I was going to throw up if that was the case. David Malukas will be running the number 4 for AJ Foyt, and he's now the teammate. Him and Root Beer Floathead are teammates, so that'll be we'll see what that combination's able to do. In terms of, Jacob Abel is going to move up to IndyCar for 2025 and drive the 51 car with Dale Coyne and Rick Ware. Ed Carpenter Racing, Ted, comprised of 4 ECR moniker, modern logo and emblematic colors to Indianapolis roots. Okay. Ted Geloff, Junior Stewart Reed. Okay. Brand features shape the teams up. Indiana Gold, Team Hoosier. Yeah, so Ed Carpenter Racing, so now they're just ECR. Okay. Which they've been called ECR for many years, so now this year, Christian Rasmussen will be the full-time driver of the 21, long for many years driven by Arenas VK, and then Alexander Rossi moves over to drive the 20 car, and then ECR will have, of course, Ed Carpenter run ovals, and Prema. They launched with, of course, Cal Milot, Robert Schwartzman, and then it looks like they've hired, so they hired Ryan Briscoe as their sporting advisor, so that means Mansky will be at races. And then Roman Grosjean will be the reserve driver. So if Carlin wants to wreck race cars, they have him. So that'll be interesting for them. Prema there. And let me see there. Yeah, you got... Those are some of the updates with IndyCar, Formula One. They're just through an hour. So, there is no major, nothing major came along this last few weeks, in last week, since other than Drogovic staying with Aston Martin, test and reserve driver, Andy Cowell taking over as Aston Martin's new team principal instead of a name that I'm not going to say because it can only get me in trouble. All the numbers for 2025 for Alpine, Jack Doohan will have number 7, previously used by Kimi Räikkönen. No changes for any of these other guys. Ollie Bierman will run number 87. Gabriel Bortoleto will be running the number 5. Of course, Sebastian Vettel ran that number. Lando Norris had taken the 4 from Max Chilton many years ago. Andrea Kimi Antonelli will be using the 12, which was last used by Felipe Nasr. Isaac Hadjar will be using the number 6, which, of course, was previously used by Rosberg and Nicholas Latifi. And then Liam Lawson will be running number 30, which was Jolyon Palmer's number. So that's the changes for or different numbers there. Everything else is same from last year. Okay, so got through all of that, so we'll get into the roundup. So Dakar Rally, few days left in this race, so there's only 4 days or 3 days left after we're doing this on a Tuesday, so 3 days left in the rally itself. And it's been an interesting race for sure. The general rankings after stage 9 have Daniel Sanders leading by just under 15 minutes over Tosha Sharania or Sharina, whatever, and then Adrian Van Beveren for the Monster Energy Honda team. Luciano Benavides is 4th, 27.44 back. Ricky Brabeck in 5th, 31.31 back. Skylar Howes, his teammate, so 4 Hondas in the top 6, sandwiching the 2 Red Bull KTMs. So Daniel Sanders in good shape if he can just maintain to win the Dakar. Jose Ignacio Cornejo for Hero, the only Hero motorcycle left. So that he's in 7th. Edgar Canet on the Rally 2, from the Rally 2 ranks, is 8th overall. Tobias Ebster is 38 minutes back behind him, but they're 8th and 9th actually overall in the standings. So credit to those guys. Looking through, Jacob Argabright is 22nd overall, and in Rally 2, he's 12th. So there's been a lot of attrition in the rally, in the Rally GP category. There's only 10 riders left right now in that category. So been a lot of carnage for sure. In original by Motul, so there's nobody, in the cars category, so that's not that. Go through that. Yazid Al-Rahi, after stage 9, took the lead. He's 7 minutes, just over 7 minutes out of Hank Ladigan so 2 Toyotas there. Matthias Ekstrom is in 4th in the Ford. About 30 seconds out of Nasser Al-Attiyah for the Dacia Sandrider. Mitchell Guthrie, the American driver for Ford, is in 5th. Got about 7 minutes on Matthew Serradori. Seth Quintero for Toyota has won a couple of stages, but stands 8th in class. And then, so that's for cars, the car category. In terms of the Challenger class, Corbin Leverton for Red Bull Junior team is 6th in that class. The married couple of Kev Figlioso and Peter Guarini is 27.58 up, so they're in good shape without, massive situation happening to them. Brock Hager has got nearly 2-hour lead over his teammate in the SSV category. So that, that's basically done. Hunter, Miller, Andrew Short, they're in 12th place. And trying to see who else. Sarah Price. Yeah, they lost so much time after having to fall out of the one stage during the chrono. Right now she's 27th out of 31. But she won one stage, so credit to her and for the battle to stay in it. Go into... Yeah, so those are the hybrid future mission, whatever cars. So Americans faring well. Only one of them, though, and it looks like is going to win. But, good battle to see Americans be in the mix here at the Dakar. Formula E was at Mexico City last week. And saw Oliver Rowland to win and Nissan win there at Mexico City. So Oliver Rowland over Antonio Felix da Costa and Pascal Wehrlein. So Nissan over both Tag Heuer Porsches. Jake Dennis ran the fastest lap. Jean-Eric Verne, Max Gunther, Stoffel Van Dorn, Nick DeVries, Nico Muller, and Jake Hughes round out the top 10. So the standings after 2 rounds of the championship, Antonio Felix da Costa with consecutive second place finishes and one fastest lap is leading the points by 12 over Rowland after his win, and non-point scorer at Brazil. Mitch Evans, who won at Brazil, didn't finish the race at Mexico. Pascal Wehrlein had qualified on pole, the defending series champion, but then DNF'd at Brazil, came through with a pole and then a third place finish at Mexico. So right now, those 3 drivers, 4 points separate them. Taylor Barnard, Jake Dennis, Sandberg, Verne, DeVries, and Mortara rounding out the top 10. In Formula E, Supercross, Anaheim won. And they'll be racing San Diego this coming weekend in at Anaheim 1, though the results for on the 450s was Chase Sexton getting the win for Red Bull KTM over Ken Roczen and Jason Anderson as a podium. Cooper Webb, Eli Tomac rounded out the top 5. Justin Barcia, Justin Cooper, 3 Justins in a row. Barcia, Cooper, Hill, 6th through 8th. Aaron Plessinger and Malcolm Stewart had a huge fall in the heat race. Round out the top 10. The Lawrence brothers, Hunter and Jet, 11th and 12th. Jorge Prado from Spain got the whole shot, but I think ran out of gas. Mitchell Oldenburg on the Beta there was last rider on the lead lap. Then in the 250, Joe Shimoda for Honda gets the win over Julian Beaumer. Jordan Smith for Triumph, so 3 different manufacturers represented 4 different manufacturers in the top 4 or 5 out of top 5. Shimoda, Beaumer, Smith, Ryder DiFrancesco, Hayden Deegan, the defending champion of the E Series and then the Super Motocross the last 2 years. So those are the top 5 here in the West for the first race of their season. And okay, we'll get into the Royal before the 24 this coming weekend. It'll also include the VP Sports Car Challenge as well. So that'll be a busy weekend. The Roar itself, test session to go and see and it'll be basically a Michelin Pilot Challenge there too. So the Michelin Pilot Challenge, the VP Racing Sports Car Challenge as well will be included. So on the prototype category, you have 12 entries. The Meyer Shank Racing team has asked ROI on the 60 car with Bloomquist and Braun, and then Phillips 66 will be on the 93 car, which will be Renger van de Zande and Nick Yellowly. JDC Miller is going to be running the I think they're running the Mustang sampling again sponsorship. They're in the 85 Cadillac, Wayne Taylor Racing. Then you have Cadillac with Whelen Engineering, the 2 BMWs, and Porsche's Penske, or no, Proton's the one that's going to have the Mustang sampling car there. So then in P2 categories, going to have 12 cars there as well. In GTD Pro, 15 cars. Give more details next week. Of course, Trackhouse will be represented with SVG, Scott McLaughlin, Connor Zilich, and Ben Keating. That's a couple of Mercedes there, the 2 Ford Mustangs, couple of BMW from Paul Miller Racing, Proton Porsche, Vassar Sullivan, Townsend Bell, going to be competing for Vassar Sullivan Lexus. Also, I'd assume that James Hinchcliffe will be competing for FAF Motorsports, so that'll be interesting to see. 2 TV guys, the 2 guys in the booth battling it out. And then the biggest class will be the 22 car GT Daytona entry there. So we'll see and get an idea of what these cars have heading into the Rolex 24. And so let's get into the divisional round and the NFL playoffs. The question is, can some of these road teams actually get get upset in this spot. We will start with the two-time defending Super Bowl champions, Kermit the Frog and the Chiefs. After a pretty long layoff, Houston, with that very opportunistic defense, is there enough firepower on their offensive side to keep up with Kansas City or make them work for it? Is their defense going to play well enough? Which the fact that the Chiefs have basically been hanging on by a thread for a good amount of this season. Will they finally get caught in this spot? Will Houston be able to come through and get a massive upset, knock off the Super Bowl champs? Josh, I'll go to you. What do you think about that game?
Yeah, that's a tough one there because I think both these teams both have really good defenses, and that's how the Chiefs have been winning their games this year is through really good defense. And Houston has had opportunities throughout the year on defense as well, and we talked about them earlier. So this is going to be a battle of which offense can be better than the other team's defense, right? And I mean the Chiefs' offense has not been that good this year, but they've been efficient. I'll say that they've been efficient this year. They haven't, they're not like a juggernaut like the Ravens or the Bills or even teams like the Bengals who aren't in the playoffs. They're not like that, but they do what they need to do to win games, and that's how they've been winning the last 2 years. So, is that going to happen again? Can they do that again here? Can they afford? Will Houston's defense, force them into mistakes and put them in situations that they haven't been in yet this year? Is Houston's defense good enough for that? That's a question that will be answered on Saturday. And Houston's offense, they've been streaky throughout the year. I mean, they played relatively well, I'll say. I mean, they struggled for a bit throughout the game. You saw that against the Chargers, but then there were other times once they were allowed back in the game, they were able to be efficient and put up points. So can CJ Stroud, lead his offense? I mean, they played each other, a couple, back over, before Christmas, but Houston lost that game. So, will CJ Stroud and without Tank Dell, he doesn't have him who he lost in the game that they played against the Chiefs before Christmas. Can they, and Joe Mixon, can they put up enough to overcome the Chiefs? So that's a big question. So I'm just gonna go with the Chiefs because I mean I'd like to see. I mean I hate the Texans, but I would like to see them try to do it, but I don't think they'll be able to. I think Kansas City goes to the AFC Championship game again. So I mean it would be interesting if Houston got the AFC Championship game, right? Because then that opens the door for the Super Bowl, be none of them being the Chiefs. So that would be interesting. But it's hard to picture Kansas City not winning this game. Even though they've been off, for a few weeks. That just hard to picture that not happening.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Jones has been a defensive player of the year level this year, and that defense has carried him. It's why Spags is getting head coaching interviews, even though when he was in with the Rams, they ended up being one of the worst teams in the whole entire league. So I have a hard time believing Houston goes in there and does the job, but D'Amico Ryans, he's a really solid coach. CJ Stroud and that offense was able to put together a strong performance against a team that, generally speaking, defensively is about middle of the road. If they can establish, their run game, if they're able to I think to get that deep passing game working, I mean, McDuffie's been playing really well in the secondary for Kansas City. I mean, I kind of feel like this game, if it isn't Kansas City just straight up all the way, it could come down to special teams. And I mean, Kansas City has Worthy on special teams returning kicks. Houston, I'm not so sure with their kicking wise. There's some issues. So that, but in the end, I have a hard time believing it. So I'm just gonna go with Kermit in Kansas City. It would make the Sunday game even more intriguing, of course, and it would open the door to in the game in general. If Kansas City somehow or another fell out there, but I don't think so. The Detroit hosting Washington game. Now, Detroit's defense, Aaron Glenn is going to be a head coach along with Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator. But after what Washington's been doing for a while now, um, the Detroit secondary has been decimated. It's not like they're really stopping anybody even before when they were fully healthy. Trying to stop Jaden Daniels here is going to be a hard ask. The Washington defense is one of the better defenses in the NFL, but I don't think that they've really had to face an offense like the Detroit Lions. And so, in terms of the fan, it's going to be as loud as any place that Daniels has played since playing in probably in Alabama or some SEC game. Whether if he was able to play at your boy's house in Florida, University of Florida, I mean, it's going to be a raucous atmosphere. He hasn't looked like a rookie really all year. Does he finally blink in this spot? If there's one place where I think that there's like a legitimate like upset potential, I honestly think it's this spot because of the way Washington's been playing. But MCDC, they haven't done all this work all this year to go and lay down in the divisional round. I think Detroit is able to get through and move on to the NFC Championship game on Saturday. How do you see this one, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, this is like you said, it's Washington. They've had a lot of moments. Jaden Daniels, clearly, one of the best rookie quarterbacks we've seen in quite a while. But now they face the Detroit Lions, who now are poised to make a Super Bowl run. And what an upset it would be if the Commanders were able to come into Detroit and defeat the Lions. Which, I mean, it could happen because, Jared Goff, I still don't think he's that good. I think he's being held up by a good system. And Ben Johnson with, Amon-Ra and St. Brown. You have Jahmyr Gibbs, you have Sam Laporta, and, you have a lot of good receivers there and good talent, so they're all playing good as a unit, but Jaden Daniels just been playing lights out. But I don't know about their defense, though. I mean, their defense has played good at times, and there's been times where I think they've gotten really lucky as a team and had some games come out in their favor, right? But if there's a team to upset the Lions, I think this is the team. But for me, I think ultimately I still pick Detroit because I think Detroit has something to prove. After last year they came up short in the NFC Championship game. I think they want to get back to that moment in that game and go through and go to the Super Bowl. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the home team here and the Lions.
Yeah, it's how I don't think it hasn't happened a lot recently where number one seeds have been knocked off. So usually it's very hard for the team to travel and make something happen. Sunday will be Philadelphia and LA, and Philadelphia, great offense. You're gonna have a team that's an indoor team in the Rams. They play, what is it, 9 of their games at least at a bare minimum inside. So going and playing in the cold weather is probably not going to be ideal for them. I would say that based on how they're coached and how they're built, they can travel and they can play in the inclement weather. Not sure what the weather forecast is for Sunday, but I said the Washington game and with Detroit is the most likely, but I think number 2 would be this one. The way the LA Rams have been playing for the last couple of months, it's a ripe game for a possible upset. And then, they could play Detroit very tough as well. So it's like if Philly turns the ball over, like Jalen Hurts has a habit of, you have some mistakes on the defense. There are ways for LA to get this win, and keep the whole thing going, considering all the drama going on out there. But I'm gonna just keep going chalk. I have a hard time believing, you know, as much as you have all that momentum and energy and whatever, that they're gonna be able to go out there, and do that when it push comes to shove. There, I'm going with Philly, and then it'll be a 1 versus 2 matchup in the NFC Championship game for uh, a a chance to go to New Orleans. Uh, how do you see it, Josh?
I think I'm going to go the opposite here and go with LA. Go here. I mean, like I said earlier, I think LA is one of those sneaky teams in the playoffs this year, and they played, pretty tough in a non-ideal situation on Monday night. So, with their style of play, I mean, they started out the year bad, but they've gone through injuries, and I think they're a team that's getting hot at the right time. So, they have a pretty good offense as well. Sean McVay is a pretty formidable head coach and knows how to get them in situations that are more favorable. And that I think Stafford, as a veteran quarterback, he knows how to play the game and be in these situations and be mistake free. And unlike the Eagles, I think Nick Sirianni just puts them in. They make too many coaching decisions and offensive decisions where they let other teams hang around, and they make too many mistakes overall as a team where they had a chance to win the game outright in the third quarter, but then other teams hang around until the fourth, so until it gets decided there. So yeah, I think it's definitely possible. So I'm gonna go with the Rams in this one and be a road upset victory, which for them being a dome team going to Philly in the cold this time of the year, not ideal, but I think they play pretty tough. So I think it's going to be a pretty good situation for them to be in.
Yeah, it's like I really was feeling going LA too, but I decided to go Philly in this spot. But I do it wouldn't surprise me, honestly. I think the NFC, there's a just as good of a shot of a LA Washington conference championship, which then would be in Arizona. Again, I would assume, than having the 1 versus 2 matchup, but we'll see with that. The game that I'm looking forward to the most, the MVP battle, Baltimore traveling to Buffalo, to Lamar versus Josh. Can Buffalo get over their hump in the divisional round? Can Lamar Jackson win 2 playoff games and 1 postseason? Two guys that are trying to fade. I mean, McDermott. I mean, if there's a chance, I don't think it's very high, but there's a chance if McDermott falls short here in this spot that they could go and move forward with somebody else. I would say that would probably be Joe Brady because Josh Allen doesn't want to lose him. But I'll let you go first, Josh. What are you thinking for this game?
This is this is probably the big matchup in terms of entertainment value here. Overall, I mean, you have two juggernauts in the AFC, Lamar and Derrick Henry carrying that offense, with their team. They've got a lot of good skill position players, but the two feature players there are Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. And then the Bills, you have James Cook, you have Keon Coleman, you have all these guys that kind of are no-name receivers right now. You have Shakir on there as well. And of course you have Josh Allen, who's just playing at a really high level right now. And Baltimore's defense isn't that good, and we've seen them go into some shootouts this year on other against other teams. But this could go either way. But I'm thinking it's gonna go with the Ravens. I think the Ravens have to win this game because I think whoever quarterback wise, I think whichever one wins this game probably ends up becoming the MVP for the league. I think this is probably basically going to be the MVP title game, probably. If they don't give it to a running back, I personally think it should go to running back, but I mean that's my opinion. But it's more likely going to go to quarterback. So if it's quarterback, it's going to be because of this game here, and I think the Ravens. I think they have to win this game for that to prove that Lamar Jackson. Because I feel like some people, there's detractors out there who think, oh well, it was not a good year for MVPs and they just had to pick Lamar, or they didn't really have a good year that was truly MVP worthy. But I think this series done pretty well, and if he can go back to back, I can prove that he's truly an elite quarterback there, and then that sets them up for a rematch in Kansas City from last year in the AFC title game that they lost. So as the home team, so it could go either way. I mean, Baltimore's defense isn't that good, so that's what I think will lead to a shootout. So this likely is going to be a game with whoever has the ball last is probably going to win. So that's the way I look at it. Especially if Buffalo has the ball last, that could be it for the Ravens. But it's gonna be a tough matchup here. But it's definitely I think it's gonna be high scoring. If it isn't, that'd be truly shocking. But I guess if it's in Buffalo, elements come into play. I suppose that's possible. But I think the Ravens ultimately pull this out and go to the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, this one's a pick'em. Honestly, I don't think you could really go wrong whichever way you go on this one. The same way you look at for Lamar is kind of like a referendum in a sense on the season. For him, it is based on stats his best season, and he's won 2 MVPs before. And you talk about running backs winning MVPs like Saquon Barkley should be in the mix for it, or I would also say Derrick Henry, to be fair, because I think Derrick Henry's existence has made Lamar Jackson's ability to do stuff more dynamic. It's not like he wasn't already a dynamic playmaker, but now you have to be afraid of who's back there running the ball. But I mean, they didn't give it to CMC last year when it was obvious that he was the MVP of the league. So they're not going to do it for Saquon when probably he would be the guy. I would say it would. I mean, it's really one of those three. It would be Saquon, it'd be Lamar, or Josh Allen. And I think Josh Allen has had the determination. He's had his head down all year. He wants to get over the hump, and he wants to get the job done, and he knows and feels like he can. Granted, the offense is a lot of, James Cook has emerged. The wide receivers and tight ends are all kind of just like one big group. Shakir's had the second most yards after catch behind Jamar Chase, which was insane when I heard that. Coleman, when he decides to show up, is dynamic. You have the not Knox. What's the other one? Kincaid, who's had injury issues. He's a guy that can make game-breaking plays. So there are pieces there. And Baltimore's defense is very vulnerable. So in that sense, yes, Buffalo's defense, same way. But you have Von Miller, who's very motivated all of a sudden again. He kind of sounds like the Von Miller from a couple of years ago when he was in LA. That won a Super Bowl. And I think I figure that leadership on that side of the ball, you have those younger guys that are hungry for this opportunity, and then Josh hungry to finally be Kermit the Frog. He goes out there and gets the win on Sunday. So it would be chalk for me. Josh, but I was debating LA. I was also debating Washington. But it would be chalk for me. Detroit, Philly, NFC Championship, and Kansas City hosting Buffalo in the AFC. Josh, you'll have Kansas City and Baltimore, rematch of last year's AFC Championship game, except swapping the home fields. And then in the NFC Championship game, the LA Rams going to play Detroit, and that'll be two indoor teams playing each other. There, Matthew Stafford going back to Detroit in an NFC Championship game with the LA Rams for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. So that would be an intriguing matchup there. So we will see what happens, and we'll recap it all here with episode 253. But oh yeah, I forgot about the Chili Bowl. So before we get in your sim segment, Josh, Kyle Larson is back in the Chili Bowl. He won his prelim on Monday night. Chris Bell won his third race of champions. So obviously the two best drivers probably in the whole entire building have already won so far this weekend, or this week. The main event, of course, is on Saturday. We will see what they can do there. There are other NASCAR drivers that are trying to make the race and make something happen. You have IndyCar drivers like Catherine Legg trying to make it. So there's plenty of intrigue with the Chili Bowl. So we'll see if somebody that isn't Kyle Larson or or Chris Bell actually win the race. It would be surprising to me personally, but stranger things have happened at the Chili Bowl. So we will see. Trying to, So the Warren Cat qualifying night. Kyle Larson lineup. Warren Cat. He'd do, and then he'd Toyota top 16 qualifier, C feature. So the A will have, the A feature, Brenham, Crouch, Hunter Schoenberg, Kevin Thomas Jr. driving for Alex Bowman, Gunnar Setzer, Corbin Ruschenberg, Clinton Boyles, Landon Brooks, Billy Van Inrigan, Stevie Sussex, Brad Sweet, Cameron Key, Derek Hager, Nick Drake, Justin Zimmerman, Kaylee Bryson, 16th, Hank Davis, Buddy Kofoid in 18th, having to try to get up to the top two to advance into Saturday's main, Jonathan Beeson, Timaz, Thomas Meserol, R.J. Johnson, Chance Morton, Garrett Williamson, and Ricky Thornton Jr. So Buddy Kofoid had to advance through a B feature and did so with his victory in. So that's something. So we will see. I'm trying to look back in the Bs. If there's anybody that stands out. Tom Harris or I know, in the Monday feature, A feature, Dylan Welch finished 10th. So he'll be up there in a B feature on Saturday with a chance. Keebler Gibbs made the B today, finished 9th. And so that's that. So we will see who ends up advancing into Saturday night's A main. All right, Josh, it's your time with the sim segment. Let us know what's going on with the Roar and the 24 iRacing 24 hours, and what else is going on in the world of iRacing in your sim segment.
Yeah. So gonna compete in the iRacing 24 Hours Daytona. So should be really exciting. I've been putting in some practice and everything. I was practicing, like I told you before, started this, and trying to get acclimated into it. I'm gonna be doing, I think last week I said I was gonna do GT3, but we did some adjusting, and my team, we're gonna do LMP2. So this class that I've never driven in before. I've done GT3 on iRacing. I'm a little bit familiar with the Ferrari 296 GT3 and some of the other cars in that class, but I guess we made some changes to the team in the class, and we're doing LMP2, so I've been putting in some laps in there, and it's been interesting. Kind of like it, actually. It's a lot of fun so far. GT3 was interesting, but I like the balance of power that the LMP2 has compared to handling. So it's been pretty interesting, kind of getting more used to not quite as fast as GTP, but still faster than the GT3 cars. So looking forward to running this. We've already got our driver schedule out, what we're going to be doing, so and what shifts we're going to be doing. So I'm going to be basically spending 24 hours. Well, I'm not spending all 24 hours, but basically I'm dedicating the whole 24 hours to the sim and everything. So should be fun. I talked with some of the guys on the team today, and I mean, they're got a couple of fast guys on there, and trying to trying to get kind of on their level, but yeah, I think overall trying to look for consistency. So trying to work on that right now, but trying to get a clean stint in. Probably need to practice a couple of stints just to get acclimated. I'm doing a couple of 3 stint, or I guess 1 stint being from about like a fuel cycle, so that's about 35 minutes per shift. So got like a 2-hour block scheduled from 11:25 a.m. until, so we're starting 12 p.m. GMT. The sims start at 12:40 GMT, so that's 7:40 local time Eastern. So my first shift isn't until 11:25 a.m. local, which in the game that's at 5 p.m. So that'll be the first shift there. Then I don't. Then I get out at 1:16, so that'll be at 6:40 p.m. So just as in going into sunset, that's gonna be a challenge there with the sun, I guess, in the game. And I guess that'll be interesting because that'll be midday here in Florida. So, the feeling I probably gotta like close all the blinds and stuff so I don't get confused by like the contrast of it being in midday Florida versus the game, with sunset and all that. And then the next time I drive is at 5 p.m. local time, ending at 6:16 local time. So that'll be the night start of the night shift there. That'll be 10 or 11 p.m. to 11:40 11:40 p.m. So that, a little bit shorter stint there. So but still in the middle of the night there in the game. And then the next shift for me at 7:30 p.m. Local, ending at 9:23 p.m. local. So that's in the game. That's from going from 1:30 until 3:25. So that's about a 2-hour, almost 2-hour shift there. So that'll be interesting there. And then I don't get back in the car. My last stint isn't until 5:30 a.m. So there'll be a little bit of time to get a little bit of rest, I guess, in there. So, but we'll definitely try to remain online to coordinate and do spot and stuff. So we'll be online on there the whole time, and definitely be streaming that and everything. So hopefully we have a good result. One of the guys on my team seems to be pretty fast, and hopefully we get into a split where we end up having not a lot of LMP2 cars and something. And I think we were talking about like trying to just get a good qualifying lap so we can be ahead of the craziness, because that does tend to happen a lot. Some people's races get ruined pretty quickly, and that's not fun. So yeah, definitely looking to get a good start here, and then all you gotta do is just take care of the car. I think really, kind of thinking about going back to the cannonball, doing that. Which actually I should tell you. So we did find out that we are verified as the rental car record holder for the route from Jacksonville to San Diego. That is on Google Sheets on VinWiki. So that's pretty cool too. But very, very truly cool there. But the goal there starting out, was to establish the average speed and get us to where we wanted to be. And then from there on, it was just maintaining pace, at least in my mind. So I think that's kind of the key here. But also trying to stay out of trouble, and that's part of it. So, and managing traffic and not getting impeded too much by the GT cars, and then hopefully the people in GTP, they are courtesy. They drive with courtesy, because I know sometimes guys in faster classes, and I've experienced this in karting, guys in the faster classes drive a little bit more aggressively and stuff, and not as with regard to the slower classes. So so far it's been all right in GTP. I've had a couple of times where the GTP actually bump drafted me, and then I ended up setting a lap time that I didn't want to set because I was like, well, now my lap time in the session's blown out of the water. I'm not going to be able to match this because I got bump drafted by a faster class. So it's like a turbo boost that I'm never going to get again until somebody else bump drafts me. So um, that was interesting, but yeah, it's just gonna be about consistency, I think, and just being able to take care of things and stay out of trouble. So never done this before, but you know, I think now is a good time to do it and to be able to run this and go through it. So yeah, really looking forward to it and having a good time on the sim. So I mean, other than that, I mean, in terms of news, I guess on iRacing, whatever else is happening, Dale Jr. did announce officially on his page that they are doing a special event at the end of January this month, charity event for his charity, running mini stocks at Iowa Speedway. So that should be interesting there. I don't know if I'll be able to do that, but for people playing, that should be fun. I think the IMSA Esports Championship that it was just run, they ran at Daytona this week. I think Max Verstappen and his team they won that. So that's pretty good there. In terms of news, trying to see what else we have. Don't see anything else. Oh, yeah, but that's basically been the focus. Yeah, it's just the iRacing 24 hours there. So, yeah, it should be interesting and hopefully come out. I mean, I don't know if we'll win, but love to be able to do that. Or I mean, I think the goal first is just to be able to finish. So let's finish the race and or at least be in position to finish the race and then let the cars fall. So I think if your last couple of stints, if you're in contention, I think you have a good shot at it. And it's definitely people say, oh, Daytona's not that interesting as a road course and all that stuff. Well, yeah, it's not that challenging, but there are parts of it that are challenging. The bus stop is challenging. Turn one is very, very challenging. So, yeah, the inner track maybe not as much. It's basically just two loops. You have the two horseshoes there. That's basically it, and then the entrance back onto the speedway. So, yeah, maybe not so, but it's very competitive and it's a lot of fun to run. So you have multiple opportunities throughout the race to compete against other people in your class or even in the overall. So glad to be able to try it and do all this. So yeah, that'll be what I'm doing this week on iRacing. So should be a lot of fun. But you can do that or you can watch that, which I'll be streaming the whole thing. I gotta come up with something because I want to be able to make it interesting when I'm not driving. So I gotta look into that. So to and also make people aware, like, okay, somebody else is driving the car, so gotta have that all in place. So yeah, that'll be at my Twitch on Twitch TV/usailor2. So go watch that there, and yeah, hopefully we have a good time. So with that, yeah, I think it's the end of the show. I mean, of course, as always, follow Twitch at usailor2, but also go follow Twitter at JPHuffline on there. So go on there and watch the streams and follow me for the takes and be talking about the Jaguars coaching search as it comes to a conclusion whenever that is. So be on the lookout for that and for the opinion there. And then also our page at Gripship Podcast, and go on there and watch our streams and our videos, and we'll have everything uploaded there so you can see the for the next coming weeks, see the Fall Brawl Wrestling Belt trophy that Philip has that will have engraved and have this year championship on there. So very, very cool item to have, especially if you are fantasy football champion. That's definitely a cool prize to have. So yeah, I'm glad to be back and get back into the swing of things.
Absolutely, man. And always look forward to doing the show. It's one of the only times where I get to not have to be in work mode or thinking about life. So it's just nice to go and have the escape and appreciate everything, all your insights and takes as always, and being one of my bros too. So good luck, of course, in your race. I mean, we'll be talking before that anyways, but you can find me at pgmatthew28 on X. You can find me at pgmgsp28 on Blue Sky and Instagram. You can find me at philipgmatthew.com as well. You can find the show, the Grip Strip Podcast, there, along with my personal YouTube page, where you can get the audio. Our Grip Strip Podcast specific page, of course, has the video feed that Josh handles, and you can find us basically anywhere you listen to podcasts when the executive producer decides to actually get off his ass and post it. So with that, we'll be back next week for episode 253, pre-birthday edition. I'm going to have to figure out a way to isolate Mike Gundy's famous line before or after whatever that on the next episode after that. But we'll talk about the Chili Bowl. We'll talk about the Roar. Josh will talk about if he can add another accolade to his Open, because now I'm going to have to amend the Open that we've had for a while now, and now we can say rental car record holder too. So with that, for Josh, I'm Phil. Thanks for listening to Grip Strip Podcast, and we'll see you next time.